is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my three great co-hosts, Federico Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hanna. And guys, here we are. It is finally September. For some, fall is about to start in about a few weeks here in the United States. It's going to be almost springtime in Paraguay, where Fede is. And what better way to feel a bit more optimistic? Well, from one side of the country at least, but at least a majority of them will hopefully get started. Here we are with our Paraguay shirts, really looking forward to the big qualifiers that are happening for 2026. Another campaign in which Paraguay can hopefully make it to their first ever World Cup since 2010. A big one, of course, for myself, Ralph, and Maria, being based here in the United States, hoping for them to qualify to this tournament if they do make it. But of course, a lot to talk about, of course, of what happened as well in the Copa Libertadores. Unfortunately, on a sad note, as Olimpia got eliminated in the quarterfinals against Fluminense. We'll talk a bit about that. And of course, what's to expect for this World Cup qualifying process. So let's go straight into it all, really. Let's go straight into this conversation. Let's go right to Fede Perez, who was at the Defensores del Chaco yesterday. It seemed like a real party scene over there, but unfortunately, it couldn't be done for Olimpia, losing on the day over there in Sajonia, really. A game that had a lot of optimism to Olimpia. You know, they had this huge comeback right there in against Flamengo in the round of 16. And, you know, and unfortunately for them, a Fluminense side that looks really dominant. They ended up winning 3-1 on the day. Goals from Kennedy and Cano, the striker that scored in the first leg as well, seems to have a fantastic tournament so far in this competition. A goal from Sabala gave Olimpia some hope early on, but again, it ended up going to 10 men, Fernando Cardoso getting sent off. And, you know, I think this was expected, really. I think Olimpia had everything in their disposal to take to the attack. You know, they had a few good chances early on from corner kicks, great saves from the goalkeeper, Fabio. But ultimately, I think this is something that was expected. But now Olimpia have to go in and try to really challenge this entire year, hoping that they can make it to some sort of South American competition. But you were there, Fede, in the Defensores of Chaco. What did you see from an Olimpia side from Chiqui Arce?
Well, hi guys, hi everybody listening to Guarani Vision. Yeah, we are back, and it is September. We are feeling the situation that the Ave Roja is coming back. You know, the games are almost there, but obviously we got to talk about what happened with Olimpia, their elimination in Copa Libertadores, in the Comebol Libertadores as they call it lately. It was kind of what I was expecting. I thought that Olimpia had to have another perfect night, and it was going to be really hard for Olimpia to do it just like they did against Flamengo. You could see that this Fluminense was a much better side. They had a lot better players. Individually, they made the difference. I mean, it was Keno, I think, in the first game, and then it was Kennedy on the second one. And it was always Cano having a couple of goals on both games. So Olimpia could not stop what Fluminense had, and Olimpia could not do their best job either. And then you had Chiqui Arce, you know, a couple of touches there on the game, on the team, on the starting 11. We can also talk about that situation because he changed the defense, he changed the midfield, and he changed the offense. And you know, I was kind of not expecting that many subs. I was not expecting that many changes, to be honest, from one game to the other. But and it didn't turn out to be a good strategy either. And then you had Bruena coming out in the second half. That was kind of weird because he was probably going to be the only player that was going to win those high balls that, you know, Olimpia was going to be pretty much forced to put in there after Fluminense got their first goal, and after Olimpia had to try to come back not just from a 2 down but from a 3 down. So it looked ugly pretty much the whole night, Roberto. I mean, Olimpia fans were going crazy on the preview. They were really excited. Yeah, they were believing, but you know, this team, they were not really feeling that they could win Fluminense because Fluminense just had way too much power. Not just on offense, defending also. I mean, props to Felipe Melo. I mean, that guy's not getting younger by the minute, and he really played his heart out in both games, and he's a leader back there. Nino also the captain of Fluminense. Fabio stopped. You said it. A couple of very important balls at the beginning of the match that could have changed the momentum. But I want to hear Ralph's take on it. I want to hear Maria's take on it because I know they will probably following the match also. Probably one of the matches of the year, probably the last big game of the year. Obviously on the Libertadores for us, Ralph. Now we got to look at other teams. We got to look at which Brazilian team has a couple of Paraguayans, maybe to root for. Maybe Gustavo Gomez again in Palmeiras, maybe a couple of Paraguayans in Boca, but we don't have any more Paraguayan teams in Libertadores, Rob.
Yeah, it was interesting that you could feel, I think, well, I felt it through social media because I'm not there in Asuncion like you are, but I could feel the expectation and the kind of anxiety, and I think there was like a glimmer of hope. And then, of course, there was the amazing Mosaic tifo at the beginning, and one of the people that is actually being shown is the winning captain's right from the Copa Libertadores, for those who haven't seen it. And one of those guys is now currently the assistant coach in CISO, and he's like crying. And so it's the whole emotion of the game, and that's exactly where Olimpia were going to win the game, because they knew they're not going to win it going head-to-head technically with Fluminense, but it was, can they build up the emotion and do something like the Flamengo match? And that's what really surprised me. I think for me, the key decision that Chiquiase got wrong was at halftime taking off Gomez for Paiva. Because for everything that they were making chances, they fall a goal behind, but they got the goal just before halftime. It's kind of a lucky goal, Savale. It takes a deflection. But suddenly they've gone in with all that emotion that they wanted. They managed to carry it through to halftime because of that goal. And by changing strategy, it just went a bit flat, I thought, in those first 10 minutes or so of the second half, when really it should have been continuing the momentum that got them there. That said, Olimpia were very close, right? I think it's Tito Torres and misses that header. And you think if he scores that header at 1-1, then all of a sudden, Olimpia would have been, they possibly could have swept the game away, honestly. But it doesn't go in. And then we see what Fluminense did really well is they just played the game very slow, they tried to take all that emotion out. They were incredibly cool in the build-up, which we know Denise is very good at. But, I mean, they were just playing everything short from the goalkeeper, playing through Olympia's kind of weak press, I would say. Olimpia went great in that press. And then they just, like, put the balls in channels. And just, they didn't want, like, a midfield battle. They didn't want to lose the ball anywhere in transition. And they were really good, I thought, at trying to take away the emotion, which is what Olimpia were trying to build up. I don't know. I mean, I think when I look back on it, I was thinking, is this the right idea by Arce? I think ultimately he went in with the right strategy from the start with Buera. He tried to throw balls into the box, which that was their best chance. They didn't press very high up, and I guess I understand that because they could have got killed. So it was better to do like the kind of mid block. It wasn't really a low block, but like the mid block. Just let Fluminense have that first build up phase and then try and squeeze. Maybe it was the best way to not be totally caught out. But then I just felt, the Paiva substitution would have been a great substitution if it had come afterwards, but not at halftime when they were building up all the emotion. And then taking Bruera off was very strange because, then you lost one of your key focal points. You were trying to throw balls into the box. When you take him off for a smaller striker, it doesn't really make as much sense. And then finally you have just the Fernando Cardoso red card, which that was very frustrating, partly because it was a poor kind of decision by Cardoso, right? He was already on the yellow card. But also just before that, what led to the break where Cardoso pulls back the striker is that Olimpia took the corner really quickly. And again, it was like, you're going to win this game at set pieces with headers. They didn't even wait for Romagna. Romagna had a really good game, by the way. Romagna didn't even arrive in the box for the corner. So he's caught halfway and they get caught on the break. And you think these kind of things are strange. Like surely all week in training, you would have been talking about, if we get corners, let's make the best of it. They had 9 corners in the end, Olimpia. So they had chances to score from there, but they couldn't make it count. And so Maria's joining us disappointed instead of happy, I think, today.
Definitely disappointed, guys. But I was actually gonna mention that red card, Ralph, because in a situation where they were at, Olimpia, they're down, they were down already in the two games. So to be playing rough like that, like Cardoso did, and then risking, a red card, it was just poor decisions. Poor decisions from the players, from the coaching, from even the fans that were, very disappointing acting in the stadium. I'm sure Fede saw it, some very racist comments and shouts towards the Brazilian team, Brazilian fans. So, it was just, everything was just one big ball of bad decisions and bad luck for Olimpia. So I don't see them actually wanting to have won that game. So it was just annoying because everything was against them. I think they had such a good flow, coming from the last game. They were down 2-0, I think, and coming here at home, they could have made some good game, a good game, and make a lot of goals. But it wasn't there for them this time around. It was an unfortunate game, but I guess the good thing about it will be that they were able to get this far in the Libertadores, and I think it hasn't happened for a while. So maybe next time next year maybe they'll get to learn from this and hopefully get to the semifinals or the finals even. We'll see. But yeah, definitely disappointing performance from Olimpia. And I don't know, this year in the Clausura, they don't seem to have such a good chance to have a good competition either, because they're all the way down in bottom of the table. I forgot, I think 9 points in the whole table, and Libertad has 17 points. So they're just like, this season is just over for them, I believe. Unfortunately, very negative comments on my side this time around.
No, that's a rarity from you, Maria. Usually, you always like to be optimistic, but this time, when it is something as negative as what we saw yesterday, that's how you know it's serious. And yeah, even that, like even not even the bad performance in the Clausura, you have to go into the Apertura as well. Olimpia currently are on 40 points in the whole table, which would mean like the first 7 qualify for a competition, the first 3 currently by Libertad, Cerro, and Fluminense qualify for the Libertadores, and the remaining 4 go to the Sudamericana. Olimpia currently on 40 points, and right below them is General Caballero with 36. So this might be a situation that if it doesn't go well for Olimpia, they might not even be in a tournament next year, which would be absolutely unheard of for a team like them. So they have to really turn around now. That's their focus, like to at least qualify for a certain competition and try to do well there. I think that's the only way for them to hopefully restart next season and hopefully be able to go on the right foot. And we'll switch gears now to obviously the national team. But before we do and talk about this World Cup qualifier, some exciting news actually happened over the last few days involving a Paraguayan player who could even get called up to the national team. We have to wait and see for the official announcement from manager Guillermo Barros Schelotto today. But the first thing that we need to talk about is another Paraguayan going all the way to England. And that I'm talking about is Enso Gonzalez, an 18-year-old forward from Libertad. He only had made his debut professionally, Ralph, and I'm going to go to you on this one, of course, being English, of course, going all the way to starting off in Libertad in a loss against Cerro Porteño. I think we even spoke about this game even then, but here he is making his debut at 17. Now, fast forward a year later, and he's made the jump to go straight to the Atlantic to play for Wolverhampton Wanderers, a club in the Premier League, a team that's always been there historically. And this was something that was not talked about at all. It wasn't talked about like when Enciso went, when Almiron went, or even any big other transfers. This completely went under the radar when a leaked photo came of him traveling from Asuncion to England. And that's where everything started to raise up of like a player going into it. This is a huge big deal because it's now the second straight time that a Paraguayan has gone straight from Paraguay to go to the Premier League. This is good news for not just for him, hopefully for Wolves fans, but just overall, it's a big thing for him to go and make that jump.
Yeah, it's a really surprising move for the part you've made, Roberto, about we didn't hear much about it. And this is what we're seeing for Libertad is this is a total change in strategy from the Libertad that we knew before. Because I can tell you, going back 10, 15 years, just the stories of Libertad holding on to players and not wanting to sell them because Cartes has so much money, he refuses to sell them, and deals fall through. I can tell you, Topo Cáceres didn't go to the Premier League. He was close to Wolves with Mick McCarthy, and it didn't happen. Nestor Camacho could have gone to Europe when he was very young. Didn't happen because they held out. Pica Lucena, same thing. This used to happen all the time, and we saw it with Julio Enciso. And actually, Brighton had to end up paying more money or change the terms. And that's why he didn't end up moving until August, right? Because originally it was going to happen in January. But this summer, our summer or winter in Paraguay, we've seen Diego Gomez go into Miami for what is a reasonable fee. I think it's a good fee, but it's not maybe what we would have expected from Libertad. And now we've seen Enzo go for 6 million, I think approximately £6 million or 6 million euros, which again, maybe we wouldn't have expected to see a year ago. They might have held on for more. And so firstly, it's really interesting to see that Libertad have slightly changed its strategy, which is great, I think, for the players themselves. But then also it's really surprising that Wolves came from nowhere, because Wolves is not, they have signed some young South Americans, but he is, of course, the first Paraguayan to play for Wolves. And their strategy is also changing as they look more to South America, having had this long kind of association with Portuguese players, right? So I think it was this kind of marriage that we didn't see coming together until suddenly he's on the plane and he's heading out there. But it makes sense. I've had people ask me about Enso Gonzalez. So there's other scouts that have been watching him. He's a very exciting player because he's very young. He's very like small and stocky, but he can play in the middle and wide. So he's also versatile. And what was really interesting about listening to Wolves when they spoke about him and what they were interested in was how good he was at recuperations and winning the ball back, which is when you think of him as an attacking player, it's not something you automatically think of. And just quickly, one of the things that's really interesting about Gonzalez is he started playing futsal. He's from the Tacumbu in Asunción. Is like a very populous area. There's not much space. There's not much green space down in Tacumbu. So he ends up playing indoor futsal, and that's where he gets his very quick feet, and that's why he's so good through the middle, which is kind of fun to see. And I saw a great photo yesterday from Antonio Barreiro, who plays in Libertad, of him sitting with a little kid in a futsal court, and it was, of course, Enso Gonzalez when he was a kid. So that was very cool, and it's a great move for him.
I just have a quick question before Fede jumps in to Ralph. I think, what do you think? Like, do you think that maybe Wolves and maybe other clubs are in England are looking at how other clubs have gained Paraguayan and other South American players, and they're like, okay, maybe this is working for them, maybe it'll work for us?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? I mean, in this kind of the way scouting works now with big data and all this kind of thing, in theory, your nationality shouldn't be a problem. It should just be the numbers speak for you. But I think in reality, people start to have these unconscious biases. So when you see that a certain players from a country don't do particularly well, that can actually almost harm a generation of players because they're not maybe rated as highly. And this is why you see Brazilians and Argentinians will always be able to move abroad, because there's always been this kind of feeling that they will be able to perform well. So the fact that Almiron has had such a good season, I think the fact that Julio Enciso hit the ground running, and he's from Libertad as well, I think it's important to think that Enciso coming from Libertad also gives clubs this idea that this youth system seems to be producing the right kind of player. So I am sure it helps. And I can tell you as a fact, there are Premier League scouts that are looking at Paraguay. They might not be in Paraguay physically, but with video scouting, it's one of those leagues people look at. But the real important thing for a player, from what I understand, is they need to do it in the Libertadores or the Sudamericana. So it's when Enso Gonzalez was playing for Libertad in those competitions that's when you get to measure up against the best of South America, especially Brazil. And then I think those stats that you see that have maybe kind of, what's the word in English, that have kind of called the attention of the scouts, when you see that happening in the eye test in real life in a game, a big game like a Copa Libertadores match, that's when, okay, this is someone we're going to really follow.
I just think it's pretty much, it has to do with what Enciso did last season, guys. I mean, Enciso scored the best goal in the Premier League. The best goal of the Premier League last season came out of a Paraguayan player that
against Manchester City. Against Manchester City, no less.
Thank you, Roberto. Against the European champion Manchester City. That's just how crazy it sounds. That's just how crazy it was last season for Julio Enciso and how big it was what he did. And that just opened doors for everybody else. And I just think that, scouts are all over the place. I've seen it these last couple of years. Scouts coming in the country pretty much every week, wanting to see different players in the youth leagues. They're always there watching players. Maybe they don't take them because they're not convinced. Maybe they don't take them because they have Brazilian players that they want to take. Maybe now this opens the market totally for Libertad, for other clubs, hopefully in the Paraguayan league, because this only came out of Libertad. We got to be honest about this too, right, guys? I mean, these players are only coming out of Libertad. Olympia's not selling right now. Cerro has not been selling well. Yeah, we had Sergio Diaz at a certain moment going to Real Madrid, but he did not make that jump. Let's remember that situation also. That was not that long ago either. So we have all kinds of examples, right, to give out. Lately, thankfully, it's been really good ones. What happened with Libertad, and I just think this catches the attention, and people are asking who's going to be the next one, because after Enciso left, people were asking that who's going to be the next one, and it was Enso Gonzalez. Everybody was pointing at this kid, and it happened so fast for him, Roberto. Even this situation, even the transfer, this whole week, it was just crazy for him. They were telling me the whole story, and he was playing. He was actually at a last weekend. He was at a birthday party with a whole bunch of friends. He had no idea what was about to happen this week, so he pretty much didn't tell anybody about anything. He didn't say that he was going on a trip. He didn't say that he was leaving. None of his friends knew anything about this situation just a week ago. And then he played against Cerro Porteño in La Nueva Olla. He had an okay, decent game. He didn't stand out, but he played, started like he's been starting pretty much all year lately for Libertad. And then he gets a call. I believe it was close to noon. I believe on Monday, he gets a call from his agent. Get ready. Are you ready? Was the big question. Ready for what? Ready for Europe. We're going. We got you. We got everything ready. They had gone to his house last weekend, got his passport. They had done all the paperwork, and they had everything ready for this kid to make his journey, make his dream come true, to play in the Premier League. That's how crazy it was for him this past couple of days. Yeah, he made his first trip. Guys, the furthest he has gone in this last year or his whole life was to Brazil. He had never gone further than that outside of Paraguay. So he made it all the way, like Roberto said, past the Atlantic, all the way to Europe, and now he might even play his first Premier League. They're talking that he might even play this weekend. I'm going crazy about this situation because Enciso, when he got to the Premier League, he had to play a couple of games under the under 20 on the youth league. So this is even bigger for him, and he's just 18 years old. He's got so much ahead of him. And just when I was feeling down about the Enciso injury that we were gonna miss him, now we got Enso Gonzalez to look forward to. I mean, guys, it's just a fairy tale. I did not think it was gonna happen this fast for this kid, but this kid is special. You can see that this kid has a spark. And Wolf fans are going to enjoy this kid, just like Brighton fans are enjoying Enciso right now.
Not to mention as well, like, this is all crazy. Of course, we don't, of course, open the doors as well to these guys. So you can't forget about him, too. But it's just insane when you think about it, guys. Like Fede said, you got a kid that was at a birthday party last week. Now he could play against Crystal Palace in the Premier League as his first game. Like, that's a huge jump. And I worry as well, like if that pressure will get to him. Again, his number just got confirmed actually as we recorded, number 30. So that is Wolves' new number 30, Enso Gonzalez. Fede, you were going to say something?
Sorry, I wanted to mention that because you asked her, are they ready? He doesn't even speak English, Roberto. I mean, he was about to start his lessons in September. His parents were getting him ready for the English lessons. They weren't even expecting this situation. He wasn't expecting a week ago to probably have minutes in the Premier League now. So everything's new for him. How he handles the situation is just going to depend on him. If he makes the best of it, he's going to get on the team, and maybe he won't even leave anymore. But if he doesn't pass the first test, he's going to have to show. He's going to have to show himself now. He's going to have the opportunity. I think that's the best thing that could happen to him, Ralph.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention about pressure and this kind of change. I have spoken to some of his coaches at youth level, asking about what's he like? What's the character like? We see him and he does interviews after games, but it's just a very short kind of period. So what they told me is he's a very level-headed kind of person. I think there's going to be a lot of comparisons with Enciso, but we should remember Enciso's upbringing is totally different to Gonzalez. If you grew up in Paraguay in the countryside, your upbringing is totally different to growing up in the city. It's a tougher life in Asunción, in the city. You're kind of fighting for everything, quite literally, like space. I'm just talking about like parking or space, or you have to have your head switched on because crime is very high. When Enciso grew up, it's a much more sheltered life. And so what we saw is in those big games, when Enciso used to get very angry and used to shout basically at his teammates or at other people or, at the referee, he's never had that. He's a very level-headed person, and his coaches were saying the same thing. And what they said is he's very disciplined, of course, to get to this level. But he's very disciplined. But when he made the first team, nothing changed. He didn't change his habits. He didn't try and, think, oh, now I'm going to get a contract. I'm getting some money. And so I think seeing that, obviously, this is now multiplied. He becomes a millionaire basically overnight. But I think he has that kind of character where he can deal with this in a very sort of level-headed way. And if you think about Miguel Almiron especially, he's a very similar character. Almiron's a very quiet guy who's never really been in the papers for going out. He doesn't really like going out except with his wife and his kids. So I think Enzo comes from a very similar upbringing, similar background. And so that could be very useful. And I will bet you as well that he's already been on the phone to Almiron. He's already been on the phone to Julio to try and get settled in, which is a huge help for him that he's not the first one to show up. He actually has other Paraguayans who can help him out. Where can he get some Paraguayan food? Because it's going to be important. What to do where to get a house, all of this kind of stuff that the players have to struggle with. He'll have two players that can help him already on that.
Yeah, no, it's a huge thing. And, Maria, just finishing off here, I mean, this is what we want. This is what we want to see. And, in the national team as well, as we'll get to that in a bit, just that's how we want our Paraguayan players to develop, really, just to allow them to really open doors for other kids that now when, I was listening to his interview, kid's 18 and his coaches are now calling him an example. I mean, look at that. Look at how the circle of life is really. You got maybe this kid a couple of years ago who was, was 15, 16, maybe even younger. He's got Almiron as an inspiration. Now he's the one that is going to face against him, hopefully, in the next few weeks. And of course, now serve as an inspiration for other young kids that are coming up that want to be in a situation that Enzo is in, or Julio, or Miguel, and hopefully that continues. And not even in England. It could hopefully be in France. It could be in Spain, Italy, Germany. We need some players there. That's where we have to keep going. And like Fede had also mentioned, it shouldn't also have to be just Libertad. It could be Guarani, it could be Cedro, Olimpia, many other clubs out there that hopefully have good enough talents and, qualifying for Copa Libertadores, so many kind of doing well in those competitions and then making that big jump to Europe.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it all depends on the kids nowadays, and I think that plays a huge a huge part. You got people like Miguel Almiron that are influencers to the younger generation and in Paraguay. So I think also like maybe the kids nowadays see that there is an open door for not just playing in Paraguay, but also playing, in big places like England, or you said like maybe Spain, hopefully one day. And it all depends on them. honestly. If they really want to succeed, they got all the tools that they need nowadays. Paraguay, I think, has been successful or becoming successful in this kind of in these transfers now. You know, they're getting more of an idea of how it works, and just opening these doors helps so much. And so and it looks like there's a trend too, because you got younger kids going away to Europe, and not just Argentina or Brazil. You can go straight from Paraguay to England, to Spain, to Italy, etc. So it's really a great thing that we're doing in Paraguay, and I love it because this also helps us as national team. We'll have the national team will have a more of an opportunity, more options for players. Obviously, we don't have a full roster yet, but hopefully, we'll see those players that were like Julio and Almiron and the one that just went to Gomez to Inter Miami. Hopefully we'll see them in the roster soon. So it definitely helps everyone in every way. So I'm really happy for Enso. I'm really happy for everyone that's making that big leap and the big step, and not being scared of going away, because what's happening to Enso, in that crazy situation that he just left out of nowhere, without having an idea of what's coming up for him, and just saying yes, that takes big, a big responsibility, because it's such a big change, and you don't want to just lose that opportunity. And it big props to their agents as well, taking on this big contracts as well, and making it work for them, because they know that these kids have big dreams, and they want to make it work for them as well.
Yeah, no, it's a huge thing, and I think it's hopefully an inspiration, like I said, to many other players. But of course, all the attention will now be focused on as we go into a good story with Enso, going into now the qualifiers, the first two qualifiers happening here in Ciudad del Este. I would say Asunción, but it's not this time. It is Ciudad del Este again against Peru, and then away to Venezuela. For those that don't know, there is a new change. Of course, we are not at 32 teams anymore. We're at 48. So we have 16 new extra spots, which also means 2 extra spots in South America. We have 60% of CONMEBOL going straight to the World Cup, with the Interconfederation playoff going to 7th place. I'll explain that in another episode because it's so hard to explain. But nevertheless, that's how it goes right now. Paraguay are now with a bigger obligation to make their first World Cup since 2010. They kick it off with probably I wouldn't say their weakest opponents, but probably the ones that would feel like the most straightforward. They have a respectable record against these two teams. Peru, obviously, they only lost once into them in their history, and they have a really good record away to Venezuela. So this is a obligation for Guillermo Barros Schelotto to get these maximum points, 6 points, as an obligation against these two sides. As we look at the lineups the call-ups, obviously, we are without Julio Enciso, unfortunately, which is a really big blow, because I think with him and the way that he's been playing, it would have been a huge jump for Paraguay moving forward. But nevertheless, we have most of the same players. We have some new names, of course, on the squad. The first one, of course, being the goalkeeper, our new goalkeeper, hopefully our starting goalkeeper, in Carlos Coronel of New York Red Bulls, Brazilian-born with a Paraguayan mom, helping him get that nationality. So he is hoping to make his debut against Peru next week in Ciudad del Este. We got some of the same names as always. Diego Gomez, as you had mentioned, Maria, scoring his first goal against Coronel. Nevertheless, I was there over there at Red Bull Arena to see that happen. Very happy. Spoke to Tata Martino as well. He was indeed happy for him, and of course, getting that call up too. So certainly, it's a good week, of course, for him. And just looking at overall, and I'm going to go to Fede on this one, because you look at some of the players that are there. We're still waiting to see who's going to get called up to the national team from the domestic league, but all eyes are probably going to be focused on the Olimpia players and the Libertad players. No Cerro Porteño players. That's going to be the first time in a long time that Paraguay will not have any Cerro Porteño players on their team. So this is, I would say it's really, and Fede, you were also there at the Apiroga, at the national team headquarters in Ipané. You were able to speak to, or at least be in the area where Guillermo Barros was there, Robert Harrison, Justo Villar, many other.
I had
You had
lunch
lunch.
with
You had
the
lunch. There
national
you go.
coach.
There you go. Wow, what a flex. You have the biggest flex of us all here. I saw Lionel Messi, but this guy had lunch with the directors at the APF. Kudos to you. But yeah, just going into all of that I just mentioned in the last minute or so, how do you see this going on? And then really these two big games happening next week in Paraguay and then in Venezuela.
Yeah, guys. We got invited. All the media actually got invited to get an opportunity to see the facilities, to see all of the training grounds, everything that's new. That training ground is just looking better and better as the years go by. Because when you think they're not going to do anything more, they just keep evolving. With all the FIFA money that just keeps on coming in. It's impressive, to be honest. I mean, I've seen that place 20 years ago when it just started out, and to see it now in 2023, I mean, those guys got it all. I mean, really, I mean, I know they're millionaires. I know they got everything in their house, but when you're there, you feel like you're an athlete, an elite athlete, to be honest. And those facilities, you see it in Europe, and we didn't have that here before in Paraguay for the national team. So it's really good. Kudos to the FA for doing that, and to opening the doors also for us, for the media, so we could see it, so we could kick the ball around to see if the grass was okay for Miguel Almiron, for the guys right before they get here to Paraguay. And I'm really happy because the list, it looks pretty good, guys. I like the list. Yeah, obviously the Enciso absence is going to be a change, a big change, I think, even on the strategy, maybe, especially for that first game against Peru, because Enciso was going to start that game. So looking at the list, I'm seeing opportunities for other players, just like I said last week around. I mean, Ramon Sosa, he's doing really well in Argentina, and I'm putting him in that order. Maybe even Matias Rojas could take that starting role also, try to give Paraguay more football. A name we haven't mentioned lately, but he's been on the roster lately, called up every time as Chaloto. He likes something from Jesus Medina. We're not seeing much of him lately because, yeah, he's been playing in Russia after he left the MLS, but he's been doing really good, guys. Also, he changed clubs. He changed clubs because he did really well last season. So maybe Jesus Medina could get a starting role also in this game. And then you have Blas Rivero. I was looking at his situation. He changed clubs. He left Denmark. He's coming back to South America. He's going to play in Cordoba. He's going to play for Talleres now. So he's having a change of clubs right when he's called up for the national team. Players are changing teams also. They're in that situation. I thought Omar Alderete was probably going to leave Getafe, but he ended up staying, and now he's called up back into the national team. Also, the defender, he could be an exciting player. When we saw him on the team, he did really well. I would love to see more out of him. But in that defense, it looks like we're going to have a couple of problems because Fabian Balbuena has some personal issues, and I don't know if he's going to be on for these games. I think he had to pass. His brother passed away, so he's going through that situation right now. That's what they were telling me this week as I was talking to Guillermo Barros Escheloto, the coach of the national team. But I want to get Ralph's take. I want to get Maria's take on this list. Obviously, Coronel's name stands out. This is the name that we've been talking about, guys. And yeah, it's going to be the new phase. I don't know if he's going to get that starting role because he's going to have to maybe show himself in front of the players. He's the new guy. And in front of the coach also. He has to have a couple of good practices, right? And maybe convince, because apparently he has Justo Villar wants him. I mean, I think Justo Villar was the person that had the responsibility to look for a new coach, and I think that's why they picked Ramon Coronel.
Yeah, and for a goalkeeper, like specifically, is very hard to just walk into a squad, right? Because you have to have a certain presence about you, and you are always leading as a goalkeeper in terms of you see the whole game, but you're going to be the first phase of build-up. I mean, goalkeepers now today are just so important in the whole build-up and the whole way your team wants to play. So for him to just kind of walk in and take charge could be could be quite difficult. But then at the same time, I guess it's easier in a national team than clubs because these guys aren't always getting together as often. So we'll have to see if Coronel gets the nod to lead from the off. And I think really defensively is so important. I was just having a look now at Paraguay in terms of our clean sheets when we play against other CONMEBOL teams, specifically CONMEBOL, because our last 3 friendlies against CONMEBOL teams, we conceded a bunch of goals. Well, 1-0 was Peru, but then 2 against Colombia and Miami, and then 3-2 Chile. So we've conceded a lot of goals, and I think you have to go back to, we had like a 0-0 draw with Colombia and a 0-0 draw with Argentina in the last qualifiers. This is like the last clean sheets we kept, but that doesn't help us because we weren't scoring. So defensively, such a big thing. And how is Barros Schelotto going to get that right? And there's a lot of questions because ultimately the defense is pretty much the same as what we've seen in previous qualifiers. I mean, maybe there'll be a little change with who goes at the fullbacks. Do we go a bit more defensive when we play away? But we've really got to sort out how we're going to defend well. That's my key thing. I know we're missing Julio Enciso, but I think although we're missing Enciso, we do have attacking options that I think can do damage to these 2 teams, right? Peru and Venezuela. I mean, Almiron is on good form. We talked about Diego Gomez is interesting actually because he's been having to play quite defensively quite a lot with with Miami. I saw in the last game he had to replace Arroyo when Arroyo got subbed off, and it was like, whoa, let's get him higher up the pitch in the box because then he'll be interesting. And I think hopefully with Paraguay he can play more of that role as an 8 and be a bit further forward. So we do have players, I mean, that I think can fill that gap, but I'm really thinking we just need to keep clean sheets. If we can't keep the 2 clean sheets here, it's going to be very difficult. And again, we talked about it before, but a lot falls on the shoulders of Gustavo Gomez because Gustavo Gomez is the captain. Gustavo Gomez is again in the semifinals of the Copa Libertadores and is favorite to win the Copa Libertadores again. He's such a good player. We know he is a good player. So how can we make sure that happens at the national team?
That's true. I think that Gustavo Gomez doesn't really transfer that talent from his from Palmeiras to the national team. So, maybe he does this time around, that knowing that we'll have more of a chance to qualify. So we'll see. Fingers crossed, like Roberto's doing. But honestly, I'm kind of a little bit more optimistic this time around. We got really nice, crossing them really hard. We got really good players in our rosters. They have more experience in more in bigger clubs, more competitions as well. So hopefully they bring all of them to this national team and just go for it this time around. I need to see that one team that feel for your country. They have such a good opportunity this time around, and we have two good opponents, Peru and Venezuela. Peru, like I said, and they've always been kind of like our a good opponent, a tough opponent for us. But playing at home is gonna be, I think, a really good thing for us. Maybe not playing at Defensores del Chaco brings us a little bit of more of a luck. Maybe Ciudad del Este brings in all that good energy, and and in Venezuela, not to say that they're not good opponents, but we've always been pretty good against them, except for when it's very decisive games. For some reason we can't go against Venezuela, but yeah, I think they have a good chance of getting really good results this time around. It's just the beginning. We still have a long time to qualify, but every match matters. And I think that's kind of like the mentality that they need to focus on. Every match counts.
It does. Even though it's the first 2 of 18 games, the fact that you have 2 extra spots, like I said, it's more of an obligation. And It's time, guys. It's time. 12 years is too much to not be at a World Cup. I think it would be great to go back after, especially for us here in Fede. Of course, you are always welcome to come to the United States whenever you want. But for them to go into a World Cup, I mean, it's the biggest thing you can ask for as a fan, and for the other 47 teams that will be at that competition. So, of course, this is where we end the episode. But of course, we need to do it in the way that we always have been doing it in the last 18 games that we covered. Now we start again. Predictions. This is a tough one, and I'm going to go to Maria first, ladies first, of course. How do you see both these games between Peru and Venezuela happening? Give me a score. Let's go for it and kick it off right there.
I see both of them wins. Peru might be a little bit of more of a challenge, so I want to say 2-1, and Venezuela I'll say 2-0.
Okay, Fede, you like to always be a bit cautious with your prediction. What says you?
1-0 for Paraguay in that first game against Peru. And against Venezuela, I'm going to go for 3-1 for Paraguay.
Ralph?
You guys are so positive. Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty set on my Peru home win 1-0 as well. I think we'll finally get that clean sheet. But for Venezuela, I was wondering, away without Julio Enciso, he would have been the perfect player for an away fixture. I'm going to go 1-1.
Ooh, okay. So we got our first fault here, a draw. That's 4 points for Ralph, 6 points for Maria, 6 points for Fede. I'm going to go 6 points as well. I'm going to say Paraguay's going to, both tight games. I'm going to go really, really conservative on this one. But hey, that's what you have to take to go to the World Cup. 6 points out of 6, but 2 goals on this one. I'm going to say 1-0 into Aleste and 1-0, similar to the game that we saw a couple years ago. Maybe not as crazy as what we saw where the penalty kick was saved by Silva, but I think it's going to be 1-0 as well. So I would say 2 goals, but 6 points for Paraguay on my end. So yeah, looking forward to it. Always very exciting. Hopefully this time they can kick off in the best form. Of course, if it is 6 points or 4, that's a very good start to the season, to the campaign. And I'm really looking forward to it as everyone else. And we'll always be looking upon what's going to happen. We'll be taking a bunch of previews as well. We've just did one with Peru with Renato Vichuez. We're going to do another one with Venezuela in the next coming days as well. So keep an eye on that. And to everyone that's listening in, thank you so much. For myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hanna, thank you so much. See you soon.